Hi guys, welcome to today's Detroit Evolution stream. We're going behind the scenes of visual effects, and as you can see, I've already got a scene pulled up here. We'll be looking at several scenes today, several different things that I have done visual effects wise in the film, including some things that you probably didn't even know were visual effects. How's everybody doing in this time zone on Saturday? Thank you, I try. I spent a little too much time preparing for the stream today and not enough time preparing myself. But, you know, that's how it goes. And Austin's over there looking at me like, yeah, a lot of that was spent drinking coffee and eating an English muffin. a lot of hard work went into this stream.
And I did that.
Well, yeah, you did all the work for me. You're the one who made the English muffin. I had to put the jam on it, though. Come on. So, yeah, we've got a lot of stuff to go through today, probably 1 to 2 hours, I imagine, unfortunately. I am back downstairs. I'm out of the studio because I thought it was easier to bring my mic downstairs than it was to bring all of my external drives upstairs because, as you might not know, as you probably don't know, the visual effects for this film, every visual effects shot added up to a total of, I think, half a terabyte, 500 gig of data. I can actually verify that. I'm gonna look it up. Let me see how much is in this folder. 830 gig. That's the visual effects shots. So this is both the shots that were exported for After Effects and then the versions of those shots that have the visual effects on them that were re-exported to put into the movie. All that adds up to 830 gigabytes or almost a terabyte of data. So yeah, I have a lot of external drives that I use for this. Obviously, I have 2 big 4 terabyte towers that I use to keep all of my data on. You be careful about putting yourself in that mirror there, champ. You are not fully dressed.
I'm fully dressed.
Questionably. Yeah, 830 gig. So it definitely and that doesn't include like the 2.5 terabytes of raw footage that came out of the camera to actually edit the film. So the film altogether is probably something like 4 terabytes of data when you consider all the visual effects, all of the raw footage of the film, all of the sound, all of the behind the scenes footage and everything. Probably about 4 terabytes is what Detroit Evolution adds up. Not 25 terabytes, 4 terabytes. So yeah, and so I have all these external drives. They're plugged into my computer. A lot of them are big. They have power sources on their own. And so taking all that upstairs was a huge pain. So I'm back downstairs at my editing station today, and we're just going to work with it. So what I have right here is one of our scenes from the DPD. And I don't have, there's no audio. One thing that saved me a lot of gigabytes and also just would have been kind of unnecessary. I didn't export any audio with this footage, but I'll tell you kind of the workflow for this. So pretty much once I edited the film in Adobe Premiere, I ended up isolating every clip that had visual effects or was a visual effect shot. And then I exported them clip by clip. So this one was 7.5, which is scene 7, clip 5. So I would just do them in order. So you can see over here on the side, maybe, although I'll actually bring down my display so you can kind of see things more comprehensively. Let's see, bring that down. Yeah, you can see over here that I've got like 8.9, 8.8, 8.7. Some scenes, such as the fight scene, which is scene 39, had 27 visual effects shots in it. So it just was whatever order it was, you know, whatever it went up to. Thank you, Jan Janine, for gifting a sub to Om's been with us a very long time. I'm sure they appreciate that. And Jan Janine has given 7 gift subs on this channel. Amazing. So there can go up to 27. There can be a lot. And then some scenes, there's like 3. So I just basically numbered them until I ran through the scene. And I exported them in MXF format, which is an uncompressed Windows version of ProRes. If you're a film nerd at all, you'll know that ProRes is like a Mac uncompressed format. This is in 4K. It was down-resed from 5.5K, which is what it was shot in, but the movie itself is 4K. So this was able to preserve the 4K resolution with no loss when I exported it into After Effects and then exported it back out with the effects to Premiere and then rendered the entire movie. So this footage has been, by the time you see it, rendered and output 3 different times. So I had to make sure that I wasn't losing quality with every render. So I always do it uncompressed, but that means that this like 7.5, this clip 7.5, this, you know, like 8-second clip was probably something like 400 meg. It was a very big clip because there's just no compression in it at all. What computer do I use? I use a custom-built Asus Republic of Gamers exotic PC laptop. I know I shouldn't really use a laptop for this sort of thing. I've been told that desktops are really where it's at, and that's probably going to be my next computer, is I'm going to build a desktop. But there's a site called Exotic PC. It's really helpful. You can build your own computer. And basically, I just gave it the specs that I wanted. I have 32 gig of RAM. I have a GeForce 1060, I believe, graphics card. And this is a 2-year-old laptop, so it's about at the end of its leg. I've kind of burned through it after making live scream and then making DE. I've really put it through the ringer, and it's starting to show. But it's also got a 1 terabyte solid state drive and a 1 terabyte regular drive. So that was like the main coverage of the specs. Neither of my monitors are 4K, which is interesting because it's a 4K movie, so I actually don't know what the film looks like at its highest quality, still to this day, because I don't have a 4K TV either. So hopefully, those of you who do have 4K monitors, it looks good and not over-sharpened and terrible. And yeah, I use a laptop, but I mean, yeah, it's 32 gig of RAM, so it's basically built for gaming. But it's more than capable of running things like After Effects. And I have this on full quality right now too, so I'm able to pretty much watch this back. Now it's rendering, that's what this green meter is. But once it's finished rendering, I can pretty much watch it in real time at full quality. So we're burned through a little bit, but not too bad. But you can see that there are, I guess, a couple visual effects, although his LED is not really visible in this shot, so I didn't, oh gosh, I gotta relearn. I'm so used to working in Premiere now. It's been a couple months since I was in After Effects. But yeah, his LED is not really visible in this shot. The light kind of, you know, washes it out, so I didn't actually bother editing it in this shot. And I guess the only thing I did edit in this shot was the monitor. So we can kind of dive into how I did this, and I made a comment in the, I don't remember if it was the Google Translate stream or if it was in the cast commentary. It was the cast commentary stream, because Chris commented on the fact that this wobbled, and I said I had to track the wobble, and indeed I did. So in order to do that, most of the effects in Detroit Evolution were done through motion tracking. So this is a very simple method of doing visual effects, and basically once you've done one motion track, you've done them all. So I ended up, there's 320 or so visual effects shots in Detroit Evolution, and I would say at least 310 of them involve some form of motion tracking, because it's inserting something in the environment that tracks with that piece of the environment. And even if you go to something like Nine's LED, you can see that Nine's LED follows his head, although this isn't a very good one. I should probably go to one where he actually looks good. I know that the bedroom scene had some good ones. Oh, and I'll actually talk about, well, maybe this one. This one was pretty good, I think. And then scene 13, 14? Where is that? Here we go. This is the hand thing. We'll definitely talk about that later. But yeah, like this is actually a really good one because he actually turns his head and then it gets masked. So we can talk about masking a little bit too here with this shot. But you can see the LED actually turns with his head, and it's like it's attached to his head. So anything that you're tracking like that has to become a tracking shot, and you have to do some kind of automatic motion tracking with it. And so I'll walk you kind of through how I did that. So let's go back to this shot. So in the case of this plexiglass thing, I'll remove the effect so you can see this is just the raw footage. So this is without the effect and this is with it. So this effect, I'll put this here so you can actually see. I designed this as a separate composition, the actual effect, the screen that goes on Gavin's computer. So this is just like a different comp I made from scratch. I gave it a background. I gave it the Detroit Police Department logo. I designed this header based on looking at the game. And this is Gotham font, which is what DBH uses very prominently. So, yeah. So I just did Detroit Police Department, the logo. These are all like ripped out of the game. And then I added this, logged in as Detective Gavin D. Reed. That's our Easter egg with his middle initial. This is not from the game. They do not have logins in their headers, but I decided to add it to fill in negative space. And then as time goes on, you have something come on screen. So this is a 3D model of a heart. And it might not be Ethereum pump, but we can maybe pretend. Nobody's looking. So don't get too head up on this part. Because that's, what I've learned is like, if it looks techie and it looks right, then that's all that matters. This I did not design. What I did for this was, there should be a section here. I can actually probably go and find it. So 3D heart, reveal in project. All right, so there's this whole folder here called Hud Elements. Now, these Hud Elements I got off of a stock asset site called Envato Elements. I get a lot of stock stuff from Envato Elements. I have a membership with them. I think it's like $175 a year. They have stock music, they have stock video, they have stock pictures, and they have stock After Effects templates and motion graphic stuff. So my Patreon ads and all that, my little Patreon outro and stuff, that's all templates from Envato Elements. I didn't design any of that from scratch. One thing, when you're a filmmaker on the cheap, embrace the concept of stock. It's really okay to use it. Most people won't even realize that you do. And so I didn't have to design, this 3D heart myself. It just came in this pack. And there's a lot of other things that have come in this pack. All of the HUD elements that you see, like RK900's like screen when he scans people and stuff, like when he scans Lotso, all of that is from this HUD pack. So it was very versatile. I also used this same pack in Detroit Awakening, so we kept things consistent. And when I point out screens like later when we're talking about other effects, you'll see other HUD elements from this same pack. But yeah, so like I have a 3D helicopter that I could have put in. I have what else we got? A 3D skeleton. Like, there's all sorts of stuff, and it's just random, it's just whatever came with it, but I saw that there was a 3D heart, and I was like, okay, we could use that. I probably could have used this for something, but I don't know, I got it. So, yeah, this is a separate timeline that I made to represent Gavin's screen. What I did was I adjusted it. So basically I dragged and dropped it in, and then I did a bunch of transformations with it. First of all, I made it a 3D object, which is really important because if you want it to move in 3D space, you have to have an x-axis, a y-axis, and a z-axis. You can't just move it in 2D space. So you got to turn on 3D layer. But from that point, I have x rotation, y rotation, and z rotation. So I can change all these things. I can twist it this way. I can twist it that way. I can spin it this way, or I can make it flip. So I'm going to try to hit undo so we can go back to that. These things here, these little dots, are called keyframes. This is how I adjust things as they're moving. And I can actually show you an example of what this would look like if I did not keyframe it. This is where the tedious part of visual effects comes in. Oh, I see my mother's in the chat. My mother actually has a graphic design degree and learned After Effects when she was in college. So I'm sure this is very interesting for her. How do I do that? I don't know, I'm explaining. Do you have to physically select the area where the 3D space is, or does it do that automatically? So I'm not really sure what that's asking, but I think you might be asking about motion tracking, so I'm going to get to that. In order to have this track along with the object, you have to motion track this object first. So that's really the first step that you do. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I just wanted to show you guys what this was. So when the workflow for when I would start working with a clip for Detroit Evolution, I would basically make a sequence with this clip. I would motion track the clip. Now I already have this motion tracked, so I'm not gonna, we'll just use this track later. But just to show you how to do this, you do track motion and you get this little tracker point thing. And what's funny is that there's probably going to be at least one person who really knows After Effects in the chat, like maybe even Kiny, because I know they really know After Effects, who's going to be like, Michelle, like you're doing this so wrong. You could have like done this so much easier. And that's probably true because I'm all completely self-taught and this is how I learned. So it's probably wrong. I think there are ways of tracking like multiple points at once. I never learned how to do that. I do single point and hope for the best. So you have this box here. And honestly, like this is just, it's a combination of trial and error on ones where it's really like wobbly or difficult like this. And it's also practice. I found that the first like 50 or so effects that I made for the movie didn't come out that great. But as I motion tracked more and more, I kind of got the hang of it. I kind of got the feel for how to get a good motion track. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to go to the beginning of the timeline, not the middle. You drag this to a point that would be easy to track. Now, with something that's clear like this, it's a little difficult because this, you know, it's not like Nine's sticker on the side of his head. You know, that was really easy to track. We had this, you know, this green sticker that I could always box around, and that made it a lot easier for the tracking tool to be able to follow it. But with something like this, you kind of just have to hope for the best. And actually, I'm not sure. I'm a little curious. Okay, so that's what I did last time. So last time I apparently picked the same corner. So good job, past self. You did the same exact thing. Cool. So these boxes, you really just got to feel for them. What I realized is that when I made the boxes really close together like this and didn't put much space between them, this made a faster track. The more distance I put between these two boxes, the slower the track was. Oh my god, Blue is here gifting 20 tier 1 gift subs. Holy cow. Also, Blue, congratulations on your new gig. I heard it through the grapevine. I don't know if Blue is still streaming. I heard that she was doing some DBH disaster playthrough. Oh, wow. Shout out to Blue. Blue's having a really great day. Everybody go give her some love. I just saw that in the corner of my eye. I saw them gift subs fly by. Woot! All right. Shout out Blue Owl's Medic. And hello, Unicosmos. Welcome. All right. So, yeah, the difference between these boxes kind of controlled the speed of the track I found. And, you know, when I say that I've discovered these things, it really is because trial and error. And like I said, anybody who actually knows After Effects in the chat is probably like, Michelle, like this is, you could look this up. I'm sure I could have, but you know, this is just how I work. I just try things and figure them out. It's just easier. And okay, so but what do I mean by the speed of the track? So I can demonstrate that. We'll make this really small, we'll make this really big. Over here in the tracking tool, once you get your box set up, you hit play. And then you wait. And you can see down here how fast or how slow things are going. Are we playing? Yes. Because if you click again, that's... Okay, so we're going frame by frame. And it's doing a pretty good job of tracking it. It's not going too slow. It's following along pretty nicely. You can see it's tracking that corner, even with the wobble. And yeah, so this is the length of our clip, and then this is the little thing that's going by. I did this 310 times. At least, because some VFX shots had multiple of these. In fact, in the hospital in the coma scene, I think there's like 5 motion tracks per shot because of all the wrinkle removal that I did on that suit. So yes, this takes a lot of time. So being able to control the speed of this is really useful. So this is taking a while. But if I wanted it to go faster, I could make this box bigger. And then you can see we're going much faster. The problem is, the faster you go, the more likely you are to get a track that's inaccurate or that drifts. So there's a trade-off here, whether you want accuracy or you want speed. Luckily, in this case, it still seems to be tracking pretty quickly and pretty accurately at the same time. So this one worked. I probably did a pretty fast track on this. Also, I'm covering a lot of area, but not too much. The amount of area you cover also makes a difference in your speed. If I was tracking the entirety of Nine's head, that's a pretty big amount of the screen, and that's going to take a longer time. If I made this box really small, also, I don't know shortcut keys. Shortcut keys, I don't know her. So yeah, this is gonna be tedious. Like I said, anybody in the chat who knows After Effects is probably like dying right now. They're like, what? She don't know what she's doing at all. Yeah, no, I don't. I brute forced my way through this, like all things in life. So if you make this really small and only track a small amount, then it goes really fast. Super fast. The great thing is, it still works. It's actually tracking that really well, which I did not expect, because that's the corner of a piece of glass. I never would have thought that that would have tracked very well. And we're about halfway through, so I could still going really well. So that goes a lot faster. So I would always start with as small of an area as I possibly could to save time. And then if that didn't work, then I would move up bigger and bigger. So a lot of it was kind of trial and error. And okay, we've actually got a full track for that object. I'm not going to use that track though. I'm going to use track 1 still, because that's what I know works for this piece. But that's how you get the track. And so when we talk about 3D space, we're talking about that track and applying it to this. So in order to do that, you have to create a null object, which is an invisible little object. And all it does is you just say, okay, null object. Okay. Oh no, I'm forgetting. Okay, piece of footage. Okay, tracker 1. I'm going to apply you to this null object. And now this null object follows the track that you just did. That null object being that red square. And then all you do is you make that null object invisible, and then you say to your piece of scenery, your screen, be that null object. Follow that null object right here. But we've got keyframes. So I want to show you what this looks like if you don't have keyframes. If you don't tweak it. If you just let it be with the motion track. It would help if I turn off the original effect. Although that creates an interesting comparison, I suppose. It would also help if I applied the null object. So there you go. That's what happens when you don't apply the null object and you don't track it at all. It just sits there and does nothing. If you apply the null object without tweaking the keyframes, it does track, but it looks a little goofy, because you can almost tell that it's like flapping, but not with the piece of glass. So this needs to be tweaked. And so that's what keyframes were for. Keyframes allowed me to tweak the x-axis and the y-axis just enough to make it more realistically bend with the screen. YouTube tutorials and Google are your friends when it comes to learning After Effects. I definitely used some multiple Google tutorials, or YouTube tutorials actually, especially for this LED. There is an LED tutorial on YouTube. It's in French though. So I couldn't understand what he was saying, but I was able to follow along with what he was doing, and that's how I learned the basics of doing the LED stuff. I learned Photoshop myself. I didn't think Photoshop was too bad, although Photoshop is one of those programs where it's very easy to learn but very difficult to master. And you have to have a lot of vision. You have to know exactly what you want to do. And that's the problem with all artistry in me. I don't have any vision. With this, it's like, oh, okay, I know I have to, you know, put an LED on his head. I understand what I have to do. When it comes to doing like 3D modeling or like pulling ideas out of space, I'm hopeless. So when it comes to the LED, this is the fun part, because there's a few different things about this LED, and actually I guess both of these shots that I have showcase two different portions of this. This one being masking, and this one being color change, which is also actually due to masking, funny enough. So how do I make this LED, and how do I make it change colors? All this fun stuff we can get into. There were very, very many LED shots in this film, as you know. Again, like probably over 300. I especially loved the shots where both Ada and Nines were in the same scene, and I had to do 2 of them. That was a lot of fun. But something like this was pretty straightforward. So for the LED, again, that tutorial I was talking about, this actually comes from that. This was a free asset, part of the tutorial that he was giving away, and so this is what I used for the LED. This is a very basic 2D object. I probably could have made this myself, honestly, in Photoshop or something. Just make a circle with some slits in it and call it a ping. Would have been really easy. So I used that, and so all of his LED effects are just a very basic 2D white ping, and everything else that you see on it is just effects that have been added. Again with the motion tracking. So as you can see, I've got, what did I just do? I hope I didn't hit anything important. As you can see, I've got a tracker on here. And so this tracked his green sticker that was on his head, which you can see here. And sometimes with things like this, I would be tracking, and then if the box drifted, I would like stop it and move it back and, you know, tweak it along the way. Not all motion tracks are as easy as the one that I showed you with the DPD scene and stuff like this. It could very easily drift. Oh, is it officially Nebby's birthday? It is officially Nebby's birthday, because it's Nebby's birthday in Nebby's time zone. Happy birthday, Neb. Alright, so let's see. So we've got the motion track. Then we start... I actually had to keyframe this a lot, didn't I? Yeah, there's a lot of keyframing going on here. But see, the reason there's a lot of keyframing going on here is because he's turning his head. So again, with the idea of what happens if you don't keyframe, and if you just go to the default, this only tracks in 2 dimensions. So this is what would happen. Or, I mean, I guess it would be better if I turn this so that you could see it. That's a little bit more obvious. Although I'm having trouble finding what axis to do it on. I can probably just go to default. Set. Okay. So this is what it looks like flat on without adjusting dimensions. And I'll turn off the blur too, just so you can see it more easily. But this is just tracking alone. This is without keyframing. So yeah, it tracks, but it's not turning with his head. It's just moving with his head, and all of the three-dimensional space has to be done manually. So that's what all these keyframes are for. And of course we're auto-saving. Look how long it takes to auto-save. Thank you, Pillow, for the host. That tells you how big this project is how long it takes to save. But auto-saving is good. Saved my life many, many times. Luckily, Adobe After Effects does not crash nearly as much as Premiere. So, yes, this turn of his head to sync with that movement had to be added keyframe by keyframe. This Z rotation is the spin of the LED. So again, let's turn off the blur just to make things more obvious. So you can see the definitive lines a little bit. Oh, this confuses me so much. Goodness. So many layers. All right. Okay, so there's no more blur, so it's a little easier to see. You can see this line here, these hatch marks of the LED, and you can follow along with those and see that it's turning, that the LED is spinning as it would in the Canon. This is what the Z-axis is. So the Z-axis, if I could actually get on the right layer for once, great. You can see that the Z-axis is controlling this spin. So the Z-axis was always the easiest to keyframe because I'd literally just have this keyframe here and I had one keyframe at the end. And I did this with every LED. I would just put one at the beginning, spin it a few times, and put one at the end, and then it just pretty much spins on its own, no matter what else you do with it. So that's easy. The Y-axis is basically the tilt inward and outward from the camera. So this constantly had to be adjusted. And then the X-axis is the other tilt, this way. So it's a really careful, delicate balance between every movement of like, okay, so we've got X-axis here, that's what's in blue, that's what we're adjusting, Y-axis is in here, and you just go frame by frame, and it's like, all right, is it off? I'm gonna add a keyframe, I'm gonna tweak it some. And so you just like tweak it a little, and then it's like he turns his head a little bit more. It's like, okay, I'm gonna tweak it a little bit more, maybe a little bit more in the X-axis. Let's do that. No, it's too much. Let's pull back some, and then he turns his head like this, and yeah. So that was basically my life for 2 months. Was doing this on every effect shot because very few things auto-track them. Once you set up the spin and color effects, can you copy and paste to the next LED appearance? My mother's asking that. Yes. So all of this stuff, the actual, let's get rid of the effects just so you can see what this would look like by default. Like I said, this was a white ping image. All this effects, this Gaussian blur, this glow, this tint, this hue saturation, they were copied over from LED to LED. So this stuff I never had to really start from scratch on. It was really the motion tracking that took the longest. Once I had this in the bag, this was just copied over. Now, there are 3 colors for the LED. There's blue, there's red, and there's yellow. So I kind of had one of each template set up that I would just pull from. So if I wanted a blue one, I would pull the blue template. If I wanted a yellow one, I would pull the yellow template. In this case, let's put on the glow, the hue, the tint, and the other glow. These are all just effects that add to its, although I guess I had one of these turned off because this was yellow. I had that glow turned off. That's right. This glow I like never used. I don't know why I put it on in the beginning. Whatever. Sometimes certain colors depended on certain things. So the blur though, this really helps it mesh with the environment. I'm actually going to zoom in even more for this. Hello, Maximilian. So you can see that this looks like too sharp for the world, right? It looks like it's a visual effect. It doesn't blend in. We have a lot of pixelation. We have a lot of noise. We have a lot of blur. Even though it's a very sharp 4K image, it's not like it's completely tack sharp. So adding this little blur effect really helps it make it look like it belongs in the world. And this is always an adjustment. This is probably 70. Yeah, 70 was kind of my default. When he was really far away, like off in the corner, I would crank this up to like 300 because he'd be out of focus. If he was really close to the camera, sometimes I would bring this down to like 35. This was always an adjustment based on what worked best with the image. This fast blur thing at the bottom is a keyframed effect. And this I didn't use all the time, but whenever he was turning his head, it was useful. This is something I actually picked up from Video Copilot, which is a online video course for making, it's like they have YouTube tutorials for doing stuff in After Effects. Because if you turn this off, then again, this is just kind of too sharp. But it's a keyframed effect where it's only active, and you can tell that I kind of sucked at this, but you didn't notice it. Hey, it happened so fast, and you're not looking that close. There are some things that you just have to accept when you're doing these sort of effects. It's like, does it look okay when you're not looking at it at 200% and slowing it down to 4 frames? It looks okay? Okay, let's just go with it. But without the fast blur, it's just a little bit too sharp. The fast blur is basically just a transition. It makes the turn of his head look a little bit more natural than it just kind of appearing out of nowhere. And I guess this is probably more noticeable from far away. So you see, like, without the fast blur, the LED just kind of appears. And there's like no real transition to it. But with the fast blur, it more smoothly transitions in with the turn of his head. So whenever I had an LED where his head was like turning into frame and showing the LED, I would put on a fast blur to make it a little bit more smooth in the transition. See if I got any questions, trying to keep up with the chat. Hey, Luke Lemon. Luke Lemon is probably one of those people who knows a lot more about this program than I do and is probably in pain at watching me try to do this. Although I think that some of you, who was here the last time I did visual effects for Detroit Awakening, I did this a stream like this last year. So let's also move on to the transition of the color. So how did this work? I'm going to go ahead and turn this blur back on so we can make this look good. So this was what we call masking. Turn on both masks and turn off the effects and turn off the keyframes so we can compare apples and oranges here. So each mask has keyframes of its own. If we take away the red and we just look at the yellow has like a little pie slice that gets cut out of it and fades away. And then the red is the opposite. It becomes a pie slice, and then it fills in. So they're perfectly synced up. And the reason this is because this mask was basically made. It was copied over to this bottom layer, and then I inverted it. Or, well, the opposite. I inverted the top one. I probably made the bottom mask and then copied it and inverted it. So you can see the inverted check here and not inverted check here. This is empty. This sticky box is empty. So this is the same mask. One's inverted or mirrored from the other one. So they perfectly match up with each other. They fill in each other. So if you actually want to see what this mask looks like, let me see. Should be able to... What do I have to do to make this visible? Oh, I'm on the wrong layer again. Always. Here we go. Maybe. Yeah? Maybe? God, it's been 2 months since I've used After Effects and I've already lost my touch. I want to see the mask! Well, I suppose you can see it here. That's one way of doing it. But yeah, so this little pie slice gets taken out, and then I keyframe it to be bigger. So this mask path is keyframe to move. So if that's not what I wanted at all. This is terrible. I hate it. What is this? I'm a professional. Everything's great. This is not how I did it. I would do it actually on here, but now I don't know anymore. Everything is awful. This is not how I did things at all. I give up. So, just take my word for it that somehow you can get a mask that appears. Thank you, Ems, for the gift subs. Just shake it till it works. So, yeah, just take my word for it that somehow you get a mask to appear here. Maybe I could just start my own mask. How is it that adding another mask makes the mask finally appear? That's not fair. Okay, this is what I wanted. Thank you. Okay, so this is how you make the mask take things out or put things back, so to say. So you can see it in real time. And maybe it's a little bit more clear if I take the other layer away. And of course, now it's gone. There we go, finally. Alright, this is what I wanted to show. So yeah, that's a mask. That's taking away the yellow. And then the one underneath it, the red, is doing the opposite. It is inverted. And it's going the same path. You know, that's the same mask. But by making it uninverted, it's adding back this layer instead of taking it away. If I inverted it, it would be doing the opposite. It would be doing the exact same thing that the yellow one is doing. It would be taking it away. So there we go. And so you basically just do layering of these masks, and you put whatever your initial color is on top, make that the top layer, and then make the other one the bottom layer, and then you have an LED that changes color. How do keyframes work? Does it fill in the movement automatically? I mean, sort of. So basically, these keyframes are not one frame apart. There is distance here. And so you have like a point A, and I guess I can demonstrate this. I can turn this mask off, or I can't really turn masks off. I'll copy this and just make a different layer. And because I don't want to change things, or if I may want to render this again later, I don't know. I'll turn this mask off. So we've got this piece here. Although it's not really a direct duplicate, so now it's just like, it doesn't know where it wants to be. Nope, okay, whatever. I'm just trying to demonstrate masks. So, just to give you an impression of what this would look like. Got this layer. So many layers. Okay. So, let's put a mask here. So this is actually kind of demonstrating how I would do this. You got this. You got the path. You click this to make a keyframe. And let's say you want it to fill in like whole. You can adjust the shape of this mask. Maybe somebody can. Maybe not me. Actually, let's add a couple keyframes. That'll make it easier. Add a couple pinpoints, actually, rather. So, all right. So we changed the mask. So yes, you can see that it does sort of automatically fill in. It automatically grows. So you have point A, which I made this triangle thing, and point B, I made this crazy Ghidorah thing, and it automatically does grow to fill in these spots. So yeah, keyframes do automatically fill stuff in, but it's not a silver bullet. There's a lot of times, particularly when you're tracking, where it trying to auto fill in doesn't always match what you're trying to do. So you have to actually do it individual frame by individual frame. And I can tell you of a couple moments in the movie, I can bring up one in particular that I'm pretty sure I had to do this on, where I did have to individually track. And the reason for that is sometimes I could not use the tracker tool, particularly if the LED was very blurry in the foreground and just wasn't trackable. Oh, I love when After Effects hangs up. All right, we're good. I didn't get worried. I had faith in it. So scene 9, the stakeout, definitely had a lot of moments. We're gonna hang up again, really? Why? That thing where you stick googly eyes over your actual eyes, but with LEDs. Oh. Oh yeah, now I had to stare at all their faces. I made a comment the other day about like how I can tell when an artist captures like their hands well and stuff. This is why. I know their faces very well. Scene 8 is the stakeout. That's right. Let's see. This is probably one of them. It's definitely blurry for at least part of this. Yeah, so you see how there's a keyframe on like almost every second? That was because, as you can tell, there was like nothing to track. the once it went blurry like that, it was pretty difficult. Like over here, you can still kind of see it. It's dark, but it's still there. But as soon as he turned his head and we lost depth of field, oh yeah, it's gone. So all this has to be done by hand pretty much, and that's exactly what I did. Was all these keyframes are just by hand, and that's why this looks a little questionable, because I mean I'm trying to keep up with a free cam and I'm trying to keep up with his head, and there's nothing to track, and you know, you do it keyframe by keyframe and you just hope that it looks consistent from frame to frame. So shots like this took a very long time because it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of just doing stuff over and over. I think this is another one that had a lot of keyframing. Where's the one? This one. Yeah. He went blurry. So if you're curious about how I go blurry, that's really easy actually. You can see that he starts off very sharp and then his LED blurs with the camera blurring. This is just an effect of the Gaussian blur, this effect here. You just start off with it at, 80, which is, again, 70 to 80 is kind of my default. Just adds enough blur to make it blend in with the environment. And then you just crank that up to 356, which is a lot more blurry. And whenever Brett would rack focus and change the focal point of the camera, I just followed that. So I just used that as a guide, and I would make sure to add that effect to make 9's LED blend in with the environment and what the camera was doing. So that's actually really easy to do. You cannot tell from watching the film that there was any struggle with the LEDs. Well, thank you. I noticed a couple of them now, but the first time I was doing the LEDs, I was actually worried. I was like, ooh, these are going to be really distracting. Like, they look like visual effects, but now I can watch the movie and not even notice them. I do think that they actually ended up blending in pretty well. And if you can compare this to Detroit Awakening, those of you who followed along with the development of Detroit Awakening and how I did the LEDs for that film, this is very different. So this is all motion tracking. I had, my little LED circles. I tracked the motion. I did keyframing and stuff. What I did for Detroit Awakening, let me see if I can actually even demonstrate this. Now, where is a scene where he has like a well-lit LED? Oh, I know. Jericho. I can actually show you a demo of what I would have done if I was doing this the way that I did Detroit Awakening, which you're gonna just die. So there is a reason why his LED is green, because I did not know when I made Detroit Evolution whether all this was going to be something that I could actually pull off. I knew that motion tracking was a thing that you could do. I did not know if it was a thing that I was going to be able to figure out. So I made the LED green so that if all else failed, I would be able to use the same method that I used with Detroit Awakening to do his LEDs, even though that method was extremely tedious and insane. What I did with Detroit Awakening was I used Chroma Keying. I removed the green from his LED and I did glowy layers underneath him to mimic the LED. You can actually use Chroma Keying in After Effects. Another autosave. That's why it was hanging up. I did it in Premiere, which is even more insane to do Chroma Keying in Premiere instead of After Effects. So this was the backup plan. If you think that what I've been showing you is tedious, just wait. I'm actually not sure what it's called. I guess it's called keyer. Just regular keyer. Keying. Color difference key? Color key. But it's obsolete, but we'll use it anyway. So key color, you just come over here and be like, boop. That's what I want to key. Color tolerance. Okay. So, like that's it's actually not bad, considering there's green in other parts of the image. And be like, okay, it's not terrible. It's not as bad as it could have been, for sure. And then you just tweak it, and like, okay. It's a little lumpy, because these weren't actual cutouts. But you add enough blur, you can almost pull it off. Looks almost circular. It's a little lumpy, but whatever. Here's where this gets tedious and terrible. And I don't know if it's going to. This might actually be a pretty stable shot. But what happens is this would shift with every frame. But no, this is actually pretty stable. This would have been a blessing. Like, this would have been easy in comparison to most of them. Now, okay, there you go. As soon as he turns his head, you have to adjust it. So I'd have to keyframe that. I'd have to actually keyframe the keyer. I have to be like, alright, that's the key color for here. But then he turns his head, and we gotta change that to a different color to keep it going. And we gotta do it again. Although now it's like, which color? Now it's just, you just gotta adjust, and some of them were just freaking terrible. So there's a couple problems here. One is that even though this is very clean, there are still other pieces and stuff of the environment that are getting removed. So you have to mask it. You gotta go like, I don't want to shape, I want to mask. Alright. You have to be like, alright, this is the area that I want to stay within, and only this area. And we gotta invert that. And then, that's not what I want. That's not what I want at all. And I don't know how you do it in After Effects, because this is how you do it in Premiere. I don't know, I guess you just live with it. I'd figure it out. But I've actually never keyed in After Effects before, so I don't know. But then what you would do is you would like take a color, and I'm just gonna, this is not right. I would find something better looking. But let's say blue, whatever. And you'd put it under. So it's like, oh look, he's got a blue LED. That looks terrible. Looks awful. Like this is basically what Detroit Awakening was And that's why a lot of Detroit Awakening stuff. Now, Detroit Awakening actually had a more circular, had a better cutout, and I also had like a metal ring that went around it. So Detroit Awakening had a better template. But this is what I would have had to do. And again, like what I just showed you wasn't that bad. But when there's ever moments in time where it would blur or where a light would pass over it or he'd turn his head into a different lighting and then the color would change just slightly and you have to adjust the key, miserable. And there were many, many times where I was doing LEDs on Detroit Awakening and I was just like, I don't even know how to do it. Sometimes I think if Detroit Awakening was ever a movie I wanted to revisit, I could go back and redo all the visual effects in it, but ain't nobody got time for that. So that was my backup plan anyway. I'm glad I didn't have to do it that way because that would have been really tedious. And quite frankly, this looks way better. Tiny imperfect donut. And yes, DA was 16 minutes long, but still took 300 hours to do the visual effects because this was so tedious. Detroit Evolution, even being 5 times the length, probably only took 500 to 600 hours in post for visual effects. So when you compare the two, I mean, it's really no contest. It could have easily taken, if I had done the same amount, you know, if I had done the same methodology, it could have taken 1,500 hours, you know, to do the visual effects for Detroit Evolution. The fact that I did the Detroit Evolution visual effects in 2 months, and it being 5 times the size of Detroit Awakening, and Detroit Awakening's visual effects took me like 3 weeks. It's definitely impressive. Like this could have taken... This could have easily taken 4 or 5 months if I had done it the same way. So I'm definitely glad that I did it this way because this was, as tedious as it was, this was the path of least resistance. There are also tools within After Effects. There's something called, I don't know where it is. Mocha AE. This is a plugin that comes with After Effects that I tried using it. It's a way to track things on skin and do like tattoos and stuff like that. But it's a little limited unless you get Mocha Pro. And Mocha Pro is like $500 or something, and I just didn't feel like investing in the plugin. I will have to invest in a plugin to do the visual effects for 7 Deadly Sins, and that was another thing, and that's like $200. So, because I have to be able to work with 3D objects in After Effects, that does not come with this. This is a 2D object. 2D objects, effects, easy. 3D objects, if I had like a 3D Android model or something like that I was trying to work with, or like a 3D car or something, you need plugins for that with After Effects. You need to Element 3D is the plugin that I'm talking about. So yeah. Yeah, no, Mocha, like, I think it might even be more than 500. It might be like 700, 800. Doyle, that's why I get cracked programs. Well, when you're a professional, you can't. You have to, because when you're doing things for money at any capacity or doing things in a commercial sphere, you can't use cracked programs. You have to be able to pull out your license. I pay, monthly for Adobe and have for 4 years. It's just life. All right, so we're about an hour in. We got another hour to go. So I have some other things that we can talk about. This one's really cool. I know you guys really like this effect. This is the interface. And I guess I can pull up both of them. Let me see. There's one in scene 35. Hand? Yeah. So I actually think this one might be a better example. Yeah, I think this one's gonna allow me to show you guys a little bit more. There's a couple different aspects of this one that we can go into a little bit. One of them being the fact that this piece of, like, the sheet here really helped because I kind of used it as, I ended up, like, using it as a barrier to, like, cover the edge of the effects. So, like, this piece of footage right here is just a masked, like, version of the blanket that I layered over the effect. And you could see, like, without that, the effect bleeds in. And then this is the actual effect. And then this is the footage. So, That's pretty much the only other interesting part here. But this actually allows me to demonstrate a few different things, including how we actually shot this. So this is hand blank, and this is just regular hand. So if you actually look at the regular footage, this was, of course, a latex glove that Maximilian was wearing. So we did this practically. But in order to have that beautiful transition of the human style skin to the Android interface, we needed to be able to get footage of both his actual hand and the latex hand to switch between. So when we were on set, we actually shot... I don't want the masked version. I guess I'll just... Oh, it's right there. I didn't even need to search for it. And now we wait. Goodness. Where's my mouse? Come on, After Effects. Really? I love the little LED you're giving me right now. Okay. Yeah, I know. I could have found it myself. Okay, so here's the actual footage. Can we... Okay. So we also shot this with his normal hand, without the glove. And I needed this as a clean plate for using the actual skin over his glove. Of course, you can tell that dear Maximilian kind of fucked with me because he didn't hold his hand the same way. And of course, nobody caught this at the time, including me. But his hand is curled. And in the glove version, his fingers were extended. So this limited what I could start with. I go to the very edge of the knuckles where they curl, and I pretty much stop. And this is why he curls from the mid finger up, is because that's all I had to work with. I didn't have fingers in my clean plate. And I think this happened on like the other two versions. This interface too, like both clean plates just didn't match at all. So I had to work with what I had. Yes, top 10 anime betrayals. Damn it, Maximilian. Curling his fingers. So, but this is the clean plate, and so you can actually see, if I could actually figure out, all right. And I got the shot all the way through. I didn't know when I was gonna have him transition to the glove version, so we just got the full shot. It's very pretty. But from there, I had this blank plate of his hand. This was the edge that I could go down to, because otherwise we lose fingers. So I was able to go down to the knuckle. Okay, let's fix this mask, please. Let's undo. Yeah, actually, that's a really good demonstration of being able to show you the difference between the two layers. And he kept it pretty close to his leg in both. So that positioning was pretty decent. So I was able to go kind of to the edge, and it blended in with his pants here. So that wasn't too weird. But yeah, I guess I only have 2 layers here, which is alright. And then we have it slowly fade in. So there's a couple things going on here to make that happen. One is the fact that we have this mask, which is slowly getting smaller and smaller and smaller until it vanishes. So the mask determines the edges of this piece of footage, and then it controls what we see of it. The glow on the edge is due to some effects, very basic. There is a glow effect that you can add. And so if I removed that, then that would take away, I would think, or is this not the right piece of footage? Here we go. If I take away this glow, that takes away the edge. So you just see the skin fading in without that interfacey kind of glow around the rim. So that's what that comes from. And as you can see, it's blue. It's got some settings. The brightness and contrast here controls how well it blends into the environment. What are we doing? There. So this is like what the footage looked like by default. Also notice that this is on a soft light filter. If it was normal, see, it looks like like it doesn't belong in the environment, because this is the base piece of footage. Same brightness and contrast, everything. Use brightness and contrast to make it as bright, and I kind of used Chris's hand here as a guide to like how to match the brightness, but it still doesn't look natural. So I put it on a different opacity, and that really made it blend in a lot more naturally with this piece of footage. And then from there, that's pretty much it, except for the fact that we're also ignoring the fact that I have a tracker on it. I tracked his finger here. Again, used motion tracking and assigned that motion track to this null object. And then used the motion track and applied it, see, null 7, null 7, null 7, applied it to the hand. So if there was no motion track on this, it wouldn't work at all. It would just stay in the same point on the screen. But because I motion tracked it, it follows along with the camera, and now it doesn't work. It's so finicky. But yeah, because I motion tracked it, it follows along with the camera, it follows along with the object, and seamlessly transitions into the interface hand. Fire continuity director, wait, that was you. Thanks, Mom. Love getting roasted by my mother in my own chat. Yeah, I can't afford a script supervisor. What are you talking about? All right, so that was the interface. What else we got? This is another example of masking. I mentioned this earlier, but this is an LED. Hi, Chris. That basically, as he goes into Gavin's hair, there's a mask here. Actually, I don't think I'm masking. I am not masking the LED. I have a piece of footage here that's just his hair that's sitting on top. So it's like the LED is sandwiched between these two pieces of hair footage. Because without it, he just sort of fades into his hair, which doesn't really work. Because it should be gone by then. So I add the hair, and so he sort of blends in with that and makes it fade in. I really like how that turned out. Already looked at this LED. Enough LEDs. What about other things? Oh, how about buffing out his suit? That's a fun one. How did we do Ada's gunshot wound? That I can show you. So at the very end here, like in the last half hour, we're actually going to hop on over to Premiere, because there's a couple effects that I did in Premiere. There's digital makeup stuff that I did in Premiere, and the gunshot wound was also done in Premiere. I will say the actual gunshot wound was makeup. So in all of the footage where she's just like got a wound on her, that was makeup. But the blood spray and stuff that comes out of her was done in Premiere. Are we going to go over the red wall? Good question, Lion. Let's do it. I'm going to add that to the list. The red wall. Oh, actually, I got a story about this. This is a good one to transition into, because holy God. I think scene 32 is where we get the red wall. No, scene 32 is where we get the buffing out of the latex. So we'll talk about, and the tattoos too. God, this scene. Look at all these layers. So much going on here. We'll get to this in a sec. So the red wall, scene 30, and we got Glitch Gavin. I'll bring up a Glitch Gavin to talk about in a bit. I think there's a Glitch Gavin in this scene. At least one of these. I know there's a Glitch Gavin here. So that's cool. Yeah, scene 30 had the red wall. This shot right here. Oh, look at them layers. Oh, and you know what? You know what's even better than layers is keyframes. Keyframes are great. Look at all these frickin' masks. Just look at this nonsense. My God. Oh, this is bringing back memories. I know that there was a mask on here. But, oh, no. It's this, isn't it? No, it's the actual red wall itself. That's what I masked. Right? Here we go. That's where we're at. Body mask. That's what I called it. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, that's what this was. That's what this was. All these different pieces of the body that had to... Look at all them dots. This isn't even educational anymore. This is just ranting. This is just... Kids, use a green screen. Because that's the lesson of this. I was too lazy to set up a green screen, and I hate myself for it. Because this is what this took 4 hours. This shot. This is 2 seconds of the movie. This took 4 hours. 4 hours! Because I didn't use a green screen. So no from me, dog. I agree. Rotoscoping. That's what this is called. Hi, kids. Welcome to rotoscoping. Is John Hale in the chat? Because he knows. He knows what rotoscoping is. Look how long it's taken just to render this. F. Yeah, this is a nightmare. This is terrible. There was a whole red wall shot that I had in the movie originally that I realized that I didn't do VFX for about 18 hours before the film was due on YouTube, and I was like, nah, we're gonna cut that scene early. We're gonna just cut to Gavin. You can hear, when you can hear Nines yelling Ada, and then it transitions and you see Gavin sitting in the hospital before he starts talking, that was where a clip was supposed to go, where he was still hitting on that red wall, and I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not doing that again. This is crazy. This is terrible. We're just gonna switch to Gavin. No one will know, and you didn't. You never knew that there was supposed to be more footage there. Who cares? I was not doing more. And now we autosave. There's a few times, there's actually a couple times where there's a scene, there's a shot when they're sitting on the couch in Gavin's apartment. And it's like pretty closely cropped, like on Gavin. And like Nines is just on the corner of the screen. And you can tell that like the edge of the screen is just where his LED would be. Yeah, that was one where I just couldn't get the LED to work. It just looked crappy. And I was like, I'm just going to crop it. We're just not going to do that effect. There were a few times where I just zoomed into the footage because I did not feel like doing the effect. But sometimes you have to just, you know. There's one shot in this movie where there's supposed to be an effect and there's not. I tried it for 2 hours and I could not get it to work. I just couldn't get it to work, and I was like, I would rather not have it and they don't notice that it's not there, and nobody has, so it was a good call, than have it and have it look terrible and then everybody notices it and it just completely pulls people out of the scene. So I always try to make things look good, and if they don't, I would rather omit something than put something that looks bad, is what I'm trying to say. So there's some cool stuff in this red wall thing, even though it's the bane of my existence. You can tell there's a few things going on here. There's the red wall, but there's also this really awesome, I'm really proud of this because like it looks really cool, this like shatter effect that when he actually hits it, it kind of breaks. This is inspired by the actual game. In Detroit Become Human, when they hit the red wall, there is like a shattering effect, like there's a spray of pixels, there's like a hit there. And so the way that this was achieved, how many layers do we got here? Huh, okay. This is the black bars that are iconic for me, because without them, the effects like bleed into the rest of the scene. So it's just easier for me to just cover them up and keep that cropped so I can tell what the final footage will look like. This is his LED, because God help me, we still have LEDs in this shot. We'll turn that off for now. This is when I realized that when I applied the red wall to this piece of footage, it covered up things in the foreground, like these flowers, and that wasn't acceptable. So I restated the flowers that were actually closer to the camera than the red wall was. So it's actually a little hard to tell that I did that. Yeah, I had to blend them a little, but you know, you can it's still worth it. You definitely don't want like these little system errors and stuff being in front of things that are in the foreground. That doesn't look right. So even just by doing this, even though it still looks like there's a little bit of a perspective issue going on, it's not as obvious. So that's what that was. This is the body mask. So this is Maximilian being in front of the camera. That is what this is. This is what took 4 hours. I had to do each mask. I was advised that it's easiest to mask in keyframe when you do it in sections. When you do it like a leg, and then you do it like a torso, and then you do it like, okay, let's add the head. And then finally the arm. And yeah, just so many freaking dots. Look at all them dots. They moved with every single frame. That's not done automatically, folks. That is done manually, every single dot. Alright, so back to this. So that's the body mask. This is the little text stuff. That's little digital artifacts and stuff. This is just a piece of stock footage, again, off Envato Elements. So I just downloaded this from the stock footage place that I'm a member of. $175 a year, worth it. What is this? This is some just glitchy effects. I think that this this stuff is earlier. That's what this is. This break here seems to be this. Yeah, so it's a piece of shattering glass. Again, from a stock footage place. Just like a little piece of glass shattering. So that's just layered over here. Opacity is brought down. It's got color dodge on. If it was a normal, you know, it would look like this. But we put color dodge to make it blend in with the environment more, change the opacity. If I were to do this scene again with green screen, how would I do it so I could still see Ada? Wouldn't the green screen block her? Okay, so if this was done with green screen, what we would do is we would shoot this scene this way, with just Ada. And actually, you know, guys, I have a piece of footage here. We can kind of demonstrate this a little bit of the concept of the parent trap effect, where you have part of the screen being from one piece of footage and the other part of the screen being the other piece of footage. But basically, we would capture Ada walking away. We would capture Nines slamming his hand in front of a green screen. We would remove the green screen, and then we'd have this just like footage of Nines. It would be almost the same, because instead of having to like crop him like this, all I would have is like him in front of the green screen, and I would just have to click remove green screen, and I would have been done. I wouldn't have had to do all this like manual removal of the background from, because that's what this is if I didn't have these masks, we're essentially cropping him out of the background. So body mask, this layer, would have been formed by green screen instead of being formed by all these masks and stuff. So that's how that would have been done. But yeah, I'll show you, I'll bring up a footage now so I don't forget. Parent Trap footage. I think it was this. No, scene 33. Probably the first take. No, second take. There it is. It's this shot. So this is an example of knowing in advance that you're going to combine two different pieces of footage to create one image. So we shot this with this in mind. As you know, this is when he reaches out for Zingavin. His hands go through nothing. We needed his hands to not actually intersect with Chris because we needed his hands for the shot. We needed to be able to get that effect of him going through air, and we also needed Chris to be separate from the background so that he could be transparent. So what this actually is this is two pieces of footage. This is a piece of footage of Maximilian running at nothing. And this was done on a tripod. So basically Brett set the camera on a tripod so the background is perfectly in sync. He didn't move the camera at all. And then we have one of Chris which he is masked. But the regular footage, if he was not masked, looks like this. Really? Oh, I think that Maximilian was in it, but he was far away. He was just present for Chris's eyeline. But I knew that I was going to crop this footage about halfway through the screen, so I knew that Maximilian being in this shot didn't really matter, but it was useful for him to be there for Chris to have something to look at and a point of reference. And yeah, so this is kind of the same idea of the 9s with the red wall, but I didn't need green screen on this because there was no, there's nothing blocking the background. There's nothing in the foreground I had to deal with. This is half and half, which can be done without a green screen. But if you have something in the foreground, you really need a green screen there to remove that layer between the foreground and the background. So I'm gonna go back here so I can. Now, if we want to talk about like how the glitch effects were made, because I was going to talk about that over here, but it's really the same principle. It's just adjustment layers. This is something I actually learned off YouTube, because I didn't really know how to use adjustment layers or displacement maps. But a displacement map, from what I can tell, because this is, again, just a guess based on this YouTube tutorial, adjustment layer is affecting all the layers that it's under. Displacement map is pulling a layer to displace what this layer is, but you're also using something for reference. So if I didn't have this reference tool, we would just be like wobbly. Like if it was just nothing, it would just, he'd just be a little like wobbly. Because I have like horizontal displacement, which sets him a little out of time, or I have vertical displacement, which it's really subtle. It's really difficult to tell that anything's happening. But red movie is this under here. It's actually the same piece of footage that I use for the red wall. It's a piece of glitchy, like distorted footage. So it's kind of like applying an adjustment of that footage to Gavin himself. And what I did was I just kind of played with horizontal and vertical displacement. And so once that piece of footage was applied, I can just like move this back and forth. I can move it up and down. And then I just tweaked it to have him jump around with keyframes. This is Adobe After Effects, for the person who asked what program this is. I use Adobe Premiere to edit. This is all visual effects. So that's how Glitch Gavin got made. And this is more red wall. I don't think there's really anything else I haven't touched on with the red wall. Of course, sound design was a big part of this. That was done in editing. That was done in Premiere. I had to use about 3 or 4 different sound effects layered on top of each other to get the right effect, because I just couldn't find anything that perfectly encapsulated what it sounds like to hit this wall in my mind. So it took a lot of layering of different effects to combine to give that right effect. I never would have realized the glitch was actual footage. I thought it was TV damage. What? No, it was definitely actual footage. I mean, I guess what you're talking about is like whether it was just like an effect I could drop on. There are things that you can buy that are like that, but this is, I mean, again, this is the tutorial I found used displacement maps, and I had footage already that kind of had that glitch effect to it with that red wall, so that's what I used. So moving on to this scene. This one's fun. There's a lot going on here, some of which I shouldn't have had to deal with, but I did. So let's start with Chris's frickin' tattoo. So Chris has this lovely wrist tattoo. It is actually very lovely. Unfortunately, this scene just, we applied so much makeup. His skin just eats makeup, and we tried so hard to cover it up, but just because of the lighting, or I don't know if it got rubbed or just whatever, It just appeared really, really obviously in this scene. And I mean, if you looked at all closely, if you looked at this in full resolution, you know, watching it on a big screen or something, it is just really, really obvious that Gavin has a wrist tattoo. So that had to be fixed. So what I did for that was I motion tracked his arm, just as I motion track all sorts of things. I think this was the motion track of his arm. This tracked really easily, thankfully. Was not that difficult to keep because his arm doesn't move that much. So we're really just trying to track the camera at this point. And then I have this layer here. I have this layer here, which is basically just a solid. It's just a normal solid that you can make in After Effects. And I put a mask on it, and I heavily, heavily feathered that mask. So you can do that with this. Like, my mask feather is super high. But if I didn't have any feather, it would just be like a normal shape. And then I just apply the feather and make it blend in with the skin. The way that I got this color, of course I gotta go find it again. 32.7, I think it was. Yeah. The way that I got this color was I just eyedroppered it straight from his skin. We have a few examples here. I think I could never remember how to like do solid settings. Okay. So yeah, we just eyedroppered this. So I think it was somewhere like over here. There's a few different parts of his skin that I could pull from. And it's like, well, that first color that I had matched pretty well. So I just went with that. And as you can see, it tracked pretty well. And it's not perfect, but it certainly covers up more than what would have been there before. And I think it looks relatively natural. One thing that I did to keep it natural, I think I have a noise layer on here. Yes, I do. So noise is something that film automatically creates. And so you can see that without that effect, there's like, it's kind of too smooth. So I use the noise to add a little bit of pixelation and make it blend in with the environment anymore. If I crank that up even more, it would have looked like this, which is too much. But if you pull it back just enough, it can kind of blend in and fit with the rest of these like little pixels and stuff. And then you never even know that there was a tattoo there. I actually considered having Gavin leaving, because this was such a pain. We were constantly having to cover it. Gavin wears short sleeves so much throughout the film. Jill Gertz also has a tattoo on her wrist, Ada, but we didn't have to use as much makeup with her because she wasn't on set every day. She wasn't in the movie as much, and she also wore long sleeves more often. So it was mostly Gavin was the one who was just always in the makeup chair with the tattoo getting covered up. In fact, you can see him getting the tattoo covered up in the most recent behind the scenes video that I put on Patreon yesterday, which you'll see on YouTube this week if you're not a patron. So I considered it for a while, like just letting him have it, because we never see Gavin's arms, so we never know. There's no canon about whether he has arm tattoos or not. Unfortunately, this tattoo was just way too sentimental for Gavin. It's like a Rebecca Sugar reference, I think, and I'm like, Gavin would never have that. So it came down to just whatever was in character. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, so we just had to nix it. Unfortunately, neither of them, and Ada too, like both Maximilian and Jill have tattoos and they're androids, so neither one of them could ever show their tattoos on screen. Chris's tattoos, none of them match Gavin. They're all very like sentimental and just not what Gavin would have. And then Michael Smallwood's tattoos, I think, are all theater related or Harry Potter related. He could probably get away with having Chris Miller like tattoos the most, but I still think that would be a little strange if Chris Miller had a giant Slytherin crest on his chest or like theater masks on his wrists, which are Michael Smallwood's tattoos. So yeah, pretty much all of them would have to have cover-ups. I would use tattoos for characters if I felt like they could fit, but 9 times out of 10, they just don't work. And yeah, Chris Miller is not a Slytherin. Like, I think that that's the biggest tell, is that Chris Miller is definitely not a Slytherin as a character, for sure. So we've also got a couple other things going on in this scene other than this tattoo. We've got the multiple points of this this outfit here. Oh god, this is the one where wow, there is a lot going on. Okay, so this one's funny. We'll get to that in a sec. I'm realizing some of the things that are in this shot that's really funny. So first, let's start with comp 7. This is over here. This is on the screen. I don't even know how many of you guys maybe actually even noticed that this was here. I felt like having a blank screen, for one, was just weird in this scene. Like, there needed to be something on this because it didn't make sense for there not to be. And number 2, this actually does make heart monitor noises, like, from a plot point standpoint later. So we needed to have something here. As I said earlier, I use Hud Elements, just like I downloaded it off of Envato. You know, it's part of my membership subscription for stock footage and stock assets. I just downloaded this. There's like a little heart rate monitor one that came with it. And I'm like, you know, this looks like future stuff. Let's just add some little doohickeys and some panels and make it look future, and let's go with it. So we just assembled that in a different layer, tracked this screen here, and then sized this down and made it fit. And so it tracks perfectly with the footage. That was pretty easy, most cases that I had to do that. The difficult part here is this outfit. So I want to show you what Maximilian's suit actually looked like without all of the fixes. You can tell there's a lot more wrinkles in it. And I might be able to maybe it's easier if I just, yeah, that's easier. If we just do like a side by side almost. So yeah, if we go from, so this is fixed, this is original. Fixed, original. Fixed, original. So this is not acceptable. This is like really, really obviously a wrinkle in the suit. So what this was is I just tracked all of those wrinkles with the motion tracking tool. And I would take like this wrinkle in particular, this really big one here. If I can find it. There we go. This wrinkle. All this piece of footage is just like this piece of the footage just copied over and then faded. So I just like took other pieces of the suit footage and made them into stills and faded them and applied them and just made it, I mean, it's pretty obviously just copied and pasted. I really didn't do that good of a job. So, but I mean, hey, it works because it's one of those things where the light is hitting it in a way where those zigzags kind of look like they could be uniform, so it plays. But at least I tried to make it so that it does look smooth, and it doesn't look like you can see the edges of where these little pieces are covering stuff up. This one's actually in the armpit. I thought that was a little bit too wrinkly, so I added that. And then, where's the thigh one? Thigh one's down here. There, you can see there's these wrinkles in the thigh, and so I covered that up and made that came out really well. That looks nice and shiny. And because they're all motion tracked, they all completely move with it. All right, so this thing on top, this piece here, I'll show you what this footage looks like without this piece of footage. If we can load. So Maximilian has talked a little bit about how difficult it was to not cry during this scene because Chris was making him really, really emotional, and he had to stand completely still, and he just, for the life of him, found it really, really difficult to not cry because even when we were watching the like commentary stream, like the comedy stream, I think even when we were doing the Google Translate stream, and the words were gibberish, like he was getting emotional hearing this. So it was very, very challenging, and it's honestly challenging for an actor in general to just like stand completely still. So he was he was definitely crying, and you can unfortunately tell in this, like, it's really obvious because he does swallow very hard, and even from far away, it's you can tell in the footage. And I was like, ooh, that's tough. We're gonna have to work with something. Somebody says they can't tell. Well, I'm about to show you about why. So I have this piece of footage here that is a still shot, essentially, of this part of his face when he's not moving. And I tracked it, and I applied it. I don't know why we're getting this flash here. Sometimes that happens with After Effects. You just have, like, a frame that just decides to drop, and I don't know why. Actually, I can probably fix that if I go to a different resolution. I'll have to re-render. But yeah, I have this little still part of his face, and I tracked it on his face, and it covers up the fact that he's swallowing. So it's using a piece of his jaw from an earlier part of the footage to seamlessly cover the fact that he was swallowing. There's a couple times that I did that in this scene. So don't worry, Maximilian, I have your back. I'm here to make my actors look great. Ingenious workaround. Not really, just copy to paste. I'm the master of copying and pasting parts of my movie into other parts of my movie. You guys know that. So, but yeah, I'm really happy actually with how well that turned out, because it very easily could have looked terrible. But I was able to make it look seamless. So this is with it, or this is without it. And then this is with it. There you go. And it's little details like this that really sell the film, because, again, I mean, that's not something that you go in thinking, oh, I need to do a visual effect for that. But when you notice things about, you know, the footage that you've chosen that maybe don't quite work, at least there's visual effects to be able to tweak it and make it so the things that you don't notice are positive. If you don't notice it, it's good, because I want you to focus on other things. I want you to focus on the fact that Gavin is reaching for his hand and this is an emotional moment. I don't want you to focus on the fact that a tattoo is leaking through. I don't want you to focus on the fact that there's wrinkles in this android skin. I don't want you to focus on the fact that the actor that is, you know, sitting still is getting choked up. There's little distractions and stuff in a screen that we want to be able to focus away from and cover up and zone in on what really matters. So that's why I use visual effects outside of the obvious, you know, the obvious things like the screen or the LED that, you know, have to be visual effects. You go in knowing that they will be. I also regularly use visual effects to just enhance the image and be able to fine-tune the movie in ways that I want it to be. And let's see, I'll touch briefly on this. Again, this is just another example of like a screen. So this is Ninja. I don't know if Ninja's in the chat anymore. I know she's here earlier, but all of our co-producers had their pictures in the movie. So this was an example of that. And in this case, again, this is just like a separate screen that I built out of Hud Elements, and on a separate. Yeah, we're lagging because it's After Effects. I've also got Premiere open in the background, which is really rough. Yeah. Here we go, Lisa screen. So this is what this looks like on its own. And pretty much I just built this out of Hud Elements and then dragged it in and then changed the opacity, tracked it. Although this didn't need to be tracked because this was done on a tripod. We knew in advance that I was going to be doing a visual effect here, and it's just easier to do that on tripod, so it doesn't require any tracking at all. This is another example of something that you might not know was a visual effect. This Jericho screen in the background. This was also done on a separate template, made out of stock elements, just like. This is actually the credit sequence from Detroit Awakening, for anybody who's paying attention. This is the same triangle sequence that's used there. Put Jericho logo over it, and then dropped it into the screen, into the footage? What am I trying to say? I don't know. Dropped it into the footage after tracking this television screen. Ardenite still can't deal with the wonky feet hidden by the jacket. Yeah, sometimes you just do things practically. Like, his feet looked weird in the latex suit, so that's why the jacket is on the edge of the... It's on the back of the bed. Now, we needed to establish that Gavin left his jacket there anyway, so it worked from a plot standpoint. But yeah, also, we've got this little strip here dividing the suit. So I thought that this looked too much like a suit, you know? You could tell that this neck part, there's like a seam here that made it too obviously a suit. And that's actually not how the androids work anyway. They kind of glow blue at the edge of their enamel. So this is, yeah, just another tracking effect. I have a little solid that I added some glow effect to. Really simple, masked it, tracked it to his body movement, and there we win. And there definitely is, at least, I guess I didn't adjust this. This is the native suit. This is not changed in any way. And then of course you have the LED there, as always. Now, this scene is fun. This scene I actually want to go into After Effects to talk about because this is an example of digital makeup. But I want to see if there's anything else that I want to cover in After Effects before I go over to Premiere and talk about that. I don't think there really is. Maybe something with the Ada attack scene and the alley. There might be the eyeballs. Maybe that. Ada's eyes. There is that. There's the fact that she, her hand is white. Her hand was painted white. She's allergic to latex, so she couldn't use the glove. So her hand was painted white by the amazing JJ. Let me know if there are actually any effects that you can think of that I haven't talked about yet that you want me to go into for sure. So again, motion tracking. Motion tracked her eyes. And then these are just, I think this might have even been like a HUD element that was already completely designed. I don't think I had to do anything here. I think the only thing I did was I might have removed a couple layers because I thought that they were too much. But this is just a pre-designed thing, and I just dragged it in and tracked it pretty much. This effect did not take very long at all. About the only thing that's maybe relevant here is something called a Bezier warp, or a Bezier warp, or a Bezier warp, I'm not sure. But basically that's what allows us to fit onto the eyeball in a way, like that's what gives us that little curvature. So does regular warp. Because otherwise you just have the three-dimensional space, but it doesn't really like fit to the eyeball like a contact lens would. So you use warp elements to curve it and bend it to make it look more like it belongs on the eye. And I think that, I don't think I even had to mask this. I think with the warps alone, I was able to have it fit into her eye. The only thing that I might have masked was the fact that, no, I guess I didn't. Because I'm trying to remember how I had her like open and close her eyes in a way that wasn't... I think I just had them fade before she closed her eyes. I think it was that easy. Did tracking Nine's LED through the car window during the stakeout change how you approach the effects? Yeah, that was rough. I had to do a lot of it by hand. I couldn't do a lot of the auto tracking in that scene because between the car window, the lights flashing over, blurring in and out, because so many of that was racked focus to Gavin. So Gavin was in focus and Nines was out of focus. A lot of that had to just be hand keyframed, step by step, hand tracked. And so that was one of the more tedious scenes for the LED for sure. How about Lazo's glowy thingy? If you're referring to the boa, that's not a special effect. That is how the boa came. Unless you're talking about... I can go to the Lazo scene. There are a couple effects here. But yeah, so 9.2 is a good one, a good example. Because this is a HUD. This is the same HUD that was used in Detroit Awakening. And so this is just little HUD elements and stuff. But if we're literally just looking at Lasso and the boa. Yeah, that boa. This is right out of the camera. It's just a glowing LED. And you can notice that if you go back and watch the cast commentary stream, I was wearing the boa on the stream, and it was very much glowing, even on a webcam. What am I going to show in Premiere? I'm going to show digital makeup. And yeah, LED boa exists. It's on Amazon. It's $40. Go get one when we're not in a pandemic. I don't know how long it's taking anything to arrive these days. Oh, I guess there's like maybe one more thing. This isn't super exciting, but it's just another example of something that I've kind of touched on like theoretically, but haven't touched on specifically, and that is like the tablets. But it's the same concept. You just track motion, you make a separate template for what's going to be on the actual screen, and then you just apply it and layer it. So same kind of concept that we've been talking about for sure. A lot of this is very like repetitive after a while, you know. It's like you kind of learn how to do one effect, and then you have a hammer and every problem is a nail. It's like motion tracking. It solves everything. I remember, I guess there's this too. This is just another example like of using templates. Although I'm not actually sure. I think I did this in After Effects. Yeah, I did. The text stuff. This is just a template that I got off Envato Market, Envato Elements, where it's like a text bubble template and you just fill in whatever you want the text to be. And that's pretty easy. So what I'm gonna do to switch over to After Effects, I'm actually gonna I'm gonna switch over to, because I don't know what I have up in Premiere right now, and so I want to cover that up for like a sec. So I'm gonna turn off my display capture here. I'm just gonna keep myself on. We're gonna close After Effects. Was Maximilian just swiping a turned off tablet? Actually, Austin's indisposed right now. I can show you what that tablet is. It's currently on our fridge because it's really useful for writing grocery lists and stuff now. Of course, right now we just have this. He drew a mouse and I put Gavin. That's our communication with each other. But this is really dope. This is a drawing tablet. They're $25 on Amazon. They're very cheap. But it's really crazy because there's this button here and you just tap it and the drawing goes away. I have no idea how this works. This is completely magic. But yeah, you can just like draw on it in real time and then just hit this to like get rid of that. I don't know. It's got to be electronic in some way. I don't know how it works. But this was the prop that we used. It's called a boogie board drawing tablet. And it looks really futuristic. So it was completely blank. And yeah, he was just swiping on a blank screen. And all of the post effects were added in After Effects. A lot of people are like are asking me like whether or not this was an iPad or something. I'm like, no, that we were way too cheap for an iPad. So I'm gonna close After Effects. Let's not save just in case. And what are we doing in Premiere? I gotta find because I was working on Patreon stuff, so I'm gonna try to cover that up and hide that and find the scene where I layered these makeup effects. Is it here? I think it was here. Although, maybe not. Because it looks like I already dropped in. Trying to find the right. Actually, rough cut. Let's go there. Yeah, you could probably, where did I find it? Literally Amazon, guys. Like, anything that you want. Shark mug, Amazon. Tablet, Amazon. Lasso's boa, Amazon. Ada's costumes, Amazon. Everything in the movie came from Amazon. And I know that that's not always helpful because a lot of times things change and things are not available at Amazon anymore. Especially now when shipping is very strange and not everything is available. But seriously, like if you're wondering where I got something from the movie, Amazon. I really can't think of any other place I shopped aside from H&M. A lot of Tina's clothes came from H&M. Some of Ada's clothes came from H&M, but I think the vast majority came from Amazon.
Costuming's from eBay is a pretty good source too.
I don't think I got much from eBay though. It's a good place to get it.
You can buy the same things on eBay without the wrinkles.
Yeah, sometimes you can buy the same things. Also, reverse image search is really useful for things like that. You can always find things like in shopping. I have so many sequences. It's 5.5K. I know that that's what it was called. It was called Picture Lock. That's what I called it. 5.5K Picture Lock. I think that this is, yes. Great. Found it. Awesome. Okay. So, we're gonna let this load up. I'm gonna turn my display capture back on. So this is Adobe Premiere. You might wonder why I used Adobe Premiere for a visual effect. Well, digital makeup in particular is really, I have a lot of plugins for that sort of thing. And a lot of digital makeup isn't about an effect. It's more about like color. It's more about layers. You treat it more like Photoshop. This probably could have been done in After Effects, but I definitely have plugins that are very useful for Premiere. And you might ask, like, okay, so why did I do this? Well, because the original footage, what you're seeing is the final footage of the film. Well, with the exception of 9's LED, what you're seeing is the final version of Gavin that made it in the film. And what would have been in the film had I not done this was this. And let me actually zoom in a little bit more so you can kind of see what I'm talking about specifically. So the difference between the two, although actually, it still doesn't work because I have all my layers still turned on. I gotta turn off everything. So yeah, much more sallow, much more, and this is color graded, so this is not altering the color grade at all. His makeup was just too heavy for the lighting that we shot this in, and we didn't realize that until I got home and looked at the footage. So we basically made him up to look like tired Gavin in good lighting and not in the darkness of a car. And when I first showed this footage to Maximilian after I'd edited it like in December or January, he was like, wow, he really looks like a corpse. And I was like, I know Gavin's supposed to be tired, but it doesn't need to be that tired. So there were a few things that I did to help make this a little bit more flattering for our dear friend here. They're mostly, so let's start layer by layer. And I'm not actually entirely sure why I did it this way, but we'll reverse figure it out, I suppose. So there's a few different effects going on. I understand. Ah, yes. This layer is the eye bags layer. That's all this is. This layer is the actual makeup. So let's start from the bottom. So lumetri color is used to brighten and adjust the actual image. And then this film layer also does the same. This is just to make things look more cinematic. So this doesn't really have to do with the makeup. But these two layers are definitely makeup layers. You have Cosmo, which is a digital makeup plugin, and you have LumaCurve, which helps with highlights on the face. I've used LumaCurve whenever people look too shiny. I've used it in music videos. I actually used it in Detroit Awakening. So in this case, it helped take that harshness and those harsh shadows and shine off the face and make the face look more flat and more smooth. Cosmo is a face smoothing tool and also adjusts the color. So if he's a little too yellow or a little, like, skin's a little too patchy, if the skin's too different, like two-toned in multiple areas, this is really useful. Also, smoothing out the skin takes away some of those harsh edges of the makeup that we had applied as well. Can I get these effects from me in everyday life? I will tell you, no, but everything on the internet is fake. So if you actually want to see like a breakdown of this, you can see the skin selection. Hopefully this isn't too horrifying. Okay, it's a little horrifying. But this is how you actually like select the skin. You can select what part of the skin you're adjusting. I wanted to make sure that I was catching his skin, but not catching his eyes, his actual eyeballs. Lips are another portion that you kind of don't want to catch because making the lips and skin the same color can be off-putting. But unfortunately, I kind of had to because that's just the way that this worked. But yeah, that's a lot more flattering, I think, because without it, the skin is just a little bit like... I don't actually know how this makeup was done to make him look like rougher as Gavin. A lot of it was in the eye bags, but some of it was also, I think, in the foundation. So I just made the skin a little bit more uniform in color. And you can change the color too, like you can go really, really yellow with it, or you can go really, really purple with it, pink with it, but the best is in between. I think pink skin tones in most lighting conditions that I work in, going more pink rather than yellow usually is more flattering with how I color grade, especially because we've got so much blue and so much green in this environment. It's really easy to get skin that comes off like too yellow or too green, which makes someone look kind of sick. You want more like the blues and the pinks to make them look a little bit more healthy and alive. So that's what I lean into. But the most significant part of this makeup is the eye bag cover-up. So without that, this is what it looks like. But when you add that back in, the eye bags basically disappear. So I really pulled back on the under eye makeup because I thought that that was making the big amount of difference. So what the under eye makeup actually is, it's just a mask of his eyes, but it's brightened. So it's a mask of his eyes that has gone through a lot of brightness boosting and color boosting and smoothing, and then a LumaCurve, which took out the harsh shadows. And you just layer those on top, and it makes the eyes a lot more smooth and a lot less baggy. So that's basically how I pulled back some of Gavin's harsher makeup. I think this was the only scene I had to do it. I did have to adjust the tattoo, of course, in the hospital scenes, and then I had to adjust this. But other than that, the makeup was great the whole time. Kristen did a really great job, and I never felt the temptation to have to pull back. I think this was just like the morning of our second day of shooting, and we were not prepared for the inner car lighting conditions. He had been made up for brighter light, like outdoor lighting. And so as soon as he stepped in that car, the eye bags were just like corpse-like. So felt like I needed to pull back on that a little bit more. There was something that kind of came up that I was thinking about. Of course, like these visual effects are all... Oh, I guess I could show you. When I talk about the difference in skin tone and like how yellow skin tones and like green skin tones aren't as flattering as like the pinks and the purples and the blues to me, like to my eye, I can actually show you the raw footage before it was color graded at all. Which is not any of this. I'm having a hard time finding it. Because I guess this is nested or something. Or this was like made on its own. You know what, I can probably go back though. I can go back here to here This is the original. This is before color grading. So if I didn't have any color grading at all, that's shot. Yeah. So this is right out of the camera. It was very yellow right out of the camera. So you can compare like this color graded footage to what came right out of the camera. Very, very yellow. And that's just the nature of red footage. It's just very flat and kind of monochrome, and it gives you a lot of leniency to be able to color grade. And probably in a future stream I will talk about color grading, but that's the difference. Those are the 2 layers of color grading that I added. This was before makeup, of course, because he looks a lot more sallow here. We can go back to the happier, more made up Gavin. Looks kind of different in this scene, but it made for a bigger contrast with Zen Gavin. That was kind of the point. I definitely wanted that contrast. I wanted that like hard cut between Zen Gavin and real life Gavin to be a big, big difference. But I didn't want it to seem like it was a different person. And that's what I was a little bit afraid of, is that you almost don't even get that it's the same guy if he looks so different. So I wanted to pull back a little, and Gavin is still the love interest of the movie, so he's supposed to not look completely like a corpse. He's supposed to look a little tired and a little bedraggled, but we're still seeing him through Nine's eyes. So you can also make the argument as well that in the scenes where Gavin looks particularly good, those are the scenes where Nines has the most affection for him. So if we see the movie through Nine's eyes, Gavin's appearance throughout the film really reflects that. So the scenes where Gavin looks the roughest, like maybe outside the bar, or in this scene, or the scene at Jericho when they're fighting, like scenes like that, Gavin looks less put together than the scenes like at the very end on the rooftop, or like during the reunion scene, or at both scenes in the DPD where Gavin looks a little more put together because Nines is expressing more affection for him in those scenes. So you could read that into it a little bit. And obviously, yeah, Zen Gavin is the most put together because he is the ultimate idealized form of Gavin. But I think that's about it for visual effects today. Thank you all for joining me so much, and for sticking with me for these 2 hours. It has really flown. I can't believe how fast the time has gone because we had a lot to unpack. But I do want to maybe do another editing stream in the future. I could walk you through, like, this is the picture lock of the film. We could walk you through how editing works if you want. We could talk about sound editing. We could talk about editing the footage. We could talk about color grading and lighting effects and other things that happened in Premiere to make the movie come to life. I might do that in the future. But next weekend, we're actually doing something a little bit different for the Detroit Evolution weekly stream. Me and JJ are going to have a little walk through memory lane of set life. JJ was not only Lotso Fratello in the film, he also was a vital part of the crew. He was a PA, production assistant, he was the set photographer, he was the on-set medic, and I know I'm forgetting other things. He also did the makeup for Ada's hand in that one scene. He was just invaluable. He was always around and always there to help with whatever we needed. So we're going to be sharing some stories from the set next weekend at noon, same time, same place. Same channel, at noon next Saturday, Detroit Evolution stream with me and JJ talking set life of Detroit Evolution. But we've got other streams coming up this week too. On Monday, we have the new time slot for Octopunk Weekly Update, 2 p.m. Monday. I will be going through news, fan art of the week. So if you've been doing fan art in the past week, I'm sure I've seen it, and it might be included in our fan art of the week curated gallery. So look forward to that, as well as news about what's coming up on Patreon and other stuff. I've got new merch designs. I've got, I know there's at least one thing I'm trying to add to the Etsy store that I know a lot of you have been asking for. So that's coming up. And what else? I know I have an announcement about something, but I can't remember what it is. It's on my list of things in my journal, but I can't remember. So, but it's going to be a great opera. I know I have a lot of stuff to talk about. Then on Tuesday at noon Eastern, we have the finale of Heavy Rain. If you've got behind, all the episodes are on YouTube. You can catch up on the previous 3 episodes of The Church of Norman Jaden, and we will make sure to save Norman in the final episode of Heavy Rain on Tuesday at noon. Then on Thursday, we've got our new time slot, 6 p.m. We're moving a little bit earlier on Twitch to make room for all the time zones, and we will be doing our first game of the week, and the first week is going to be Crash Team Racing on the Switch. On Oppo on Monday, I'll be telling you how you can join me on Crash Team Racing and race against me during the stream if you have Crash Team Racing on the Switch yourself, and there'll be more information about that coming on Opwo. So yeah, Crash Team Racing, Heavy Rain, Opwo, and a Detroit Evolution stream with JJ, and we'll be also continuing Zero Escape on YouTube streaming on Thursday night as well. So we've got 5 streams coming up next week. It's getting pretty wild out there. But yes, thank you for joining me. I've really appreciated your interest today. And thank you to all of the folks who gave gifts, especially Blue Owl's Medic for stopping by, and congratulations to her for that big news that she had today. Go check out her stream and her feed to see what I'm talking about by that big news that Blue has. Really cool stuff. And as always, stay great, hydrate, have a happy time zone.